Hello, everybody. Welcome to this free AI workshop from Infosec Institute, where we're going to show you how to train your first cybersecurity model in just 90 minutes. My name is Jeff Peters. I'm the Director of Brand and Content Marketing here at Infosec. We have a great interactive workshop planned for today, so let's jump right in. Very excited to have Keatron Evans back for us for another training session. I assume a lot of you probably know Keatron, but if not, he is a 20-year cybersecurity practitioner and an AWS certified generative AI subject matter expert. As the VP of Portfolio Product and AI Strategy here at Infosec, he leads the development of our cutting-edge solutions that are redefining cybersecurity education and training. And this includes our new bootcamp, Generative and Agentic AI for cybersecurity professionals, which is where a lot of this content is coming from today. He's also the author of Chained Exploits, Advanced Hacking from Start to Finish, and a founding member of an AI company that developed offensive cybersecurity tools for U.S. intelligence organizations. Welcome, Keatron.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that great introduction.
So before I hand it off for the workshop, just a little bit of context here. So here at Infosec, we've been doing these live certification trainings for about 20 years now. Keatron was actually one of the first people to teach those. So the goal of these workshops, like this one, is to just give you a slice of the skills that you'll learn in our boot camps. And over the past few years, as AI has really become that in-demand skill for cybersecurity professionals, Keatron and his team has created some great AI content, including this new boot camp that launches December 8th. Is actually our first run of this new Agentic AI bootcamp that we're going to be talking about. So I know Keatron was really excited about AI and about this new bootcamp that he helped put together. So that's why we're doing this free workshop, give everybody a taste of that, help build your AI skills, all that good stuff. So it is interactive. There is a link to the lab that we're going to share in a second, so you can walk through it with Keatron. But don't worry at all if you get behind or if you just want to watch along the first time, and then you'll be able to go back and revisit it and, hopefully learn and go through it multiple times if you want. So last thing, before we hand it over, here's the steps to access the lab environment. You don't have to pay for Infosec Skills. Infosec Skills, if you don't know, is our on-demand training library, which has like 1,400 courses and all these labs in it. But we put this one in our free tier, so if you don't have an account, you should get prompted to what looks like on the screen where you just got to create a free account. It takes like 20 seconds. And then click that link again, and you'll go right into the lab environment that Keatron is going to be sharing today. If you do have any trouble accessing it, usually it's a browser plugin issue or like a privacy setting issue if you have any trouble. But we can follow up after the webinar if there's any specific troubleshooting questions to make sure you all get access. But with that, I'm going to hand it over to Keatron to do all the fun stuff.
All right. Thank you very much, Jeff. Let me just get control here. So first off, thank you all for joining today. This is one of the more exciting, webinars that I've done. Like I've really been looking forward to this for a while, just because it's one of those things that, there's been points in my career where I felt like the stuff that we're putting out is pivotal to our customers, to our audience. And I think this is one of those things, right? Like what I've heard from you all, like those of you that I trained 20 years ago up to the ones that I trained 3 to 5 years ago, is like, how's AI going to affect my job? Like, is my pen testing role in jeopardy? Is my cybersecurity engineering role in jeopardy? What's that going to look like with AI? How can I secure my future? Well, one good answer for that is getting yourself close to the technology, getting in front of it, truly marrying AI skills to your cyber knowledge is the best way to get yourself in a position to where you're not so worried about that because you understand it at a level that you can see around the corner. You can see where it's going to be instrumental and take over certain things in cyber and where it's just not, right? There's no shortcut to that. There's no way around that. The goal here today is to get you all, because our assumption is most of you come from a pure cybersecurity background. You probably followed me for years. I'm sure some of you I've had in classes. This is me reaching out to you saying, we got you covered. We're going to bridge that gap for you, get you right into training model, Yes, this is hard stuff. No, it's not easy. But if you do it the same way I taught some of you years ago to do things, if you take this 1 hour exercise, go back, repeat it over and over and over and over and over again until you got the steps down, that puts you mentally in a place where now you can take each step, dive in deeper. If you want to become a Python master and know everything about how we're using Python to do this, then great. You'll have the mental capability to do that. If you really want to understand like why we're using a Jupyter notebook to do this and why most people in machine learning use these types of tools to do these things, there's room for you to do that. But here it's to get, the goal is to get you in right away, let you see what it's like to actually train a model, because it's really not as complex as some people make it seem, right? So we're really just talking about numbers and data, right? Numbers and data. Data is where we live, numbers is where machine learning and AI lives. The main goal here is we have to do a constant transformation or a converting back and forth between numbers and data to get the data that we're going to be working with refined to be used for AI. So what are we talking about? In this particular exercise, and this is just one lab, right? This is one lab out of the 30 or so labs that you would do in the AI bootcamp that's coming up in December. And essentially what we're doing here is we're introducing you to agent-driven frameworks. So we're going right in with generative AI, models, training, and agentic AI. Like we're putting all that in here because at the end of the day, what we're going to end up doing is taking a model that's not suited for cyber, using some public attack and instant response data, right? Some public, so it's called KDD Cup. So it's essentially public domain traffic captures of real attacks, right? And real attack scenarios and real malware scenarios and all of these different things that are in this big data set that we're going to use to train this model that actually knows nothing about cyber, nothing about those types of things. Then when we finish training that model, we're going to fine tune it, but we're not just going to fine tune it the manual way. We're going to fine tune it. Then we're going to give an agent the job of fine tuning that model and set it up to where the agent can fine tune that model kind of on the fly as needed. Okay. That's the high level of what we're doing. And I want you to keep that in mind because as we get into the weeds, some of that can get lost. So a couple things we've done. Is the lab that you're going to go to, I think they might have put that in chat or sent you that already, but if not, the requirements are you have to already have a skills account if you want to follow along and try to do some of these things, and you have to be logged in. So when you're logged in, there's a link that takes you right to this lab. Okay, and once you get into this lab, it'll kind of start up and you'll be left at this page right here. So what we're going to do is while I'm talking through the intro, give everybody a minute just to get this lab up. I'm going to say in 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, I'm going to go assume that people are up with the lab and we're going to start moving forward. Remember, if you don't have a skills account and you're rushing trying to create one now, don't sweat it. It is all recorded. If you create a skills account later, you can come back once you have your account and watch this recording and follow along step by step. So the main thing is relax, calm down, don't stress it. There's time. There is time. Okay. Now, so in cybersecurity, like what you've seen and what you've all heard is automation and AI driven workflows are becoming something that's very attractive to shareholders, the people that run the company, and all those types of things, right? Now, in cybersecurity, this automation is invaluable because, what is the thing that we've heard for the last 10 years? We are in a cybersecurity talent shortage. Well, while AI is not going to solve that problem, using these models, using these agents, we can definitely use it to shrink that gap some, right? Some of the roles that we have open that we can't seem to get people hired for, we may be able to agentically place AI in those roles or somewhat in those roles and kind of allow you, for example, a person that kind of halfway does that role now to maybe do a better job of that role while still do your regular job. Or, maybe you're devoting 10 hours a week to that second job since you can't find a person to do it. Maybe you can get down to devoting an hour or two to that job because you've built an agentic solution around solving for that job, right? So these are things that are going to change the landscape. And quite frankly, the narrative of cybersecurity is going to end up changing as well. Now, there are some techniques and things in here that is in the lab that we made. Like there's one, for example, the hyperparameter tuning, right? This is where you get into fine tuning to fine tune. Okay. That part takes about anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes to complete. We probably won't do that. I'll explain it to you, tell you what it's doing so that you can kind of see how it works, because it does take up a lot of time. But that's a big part of this is just waiting for it to finish. So once I'm in here and I've logged in using the credentials, and again, the way you get in is when you first log in or when you first get into the lab, you'll have two tabs over here to the right. One's instructions, one's resources. If you go to resources, it gives you the username and password to get logged into this VM. Right? Once logged in, and it should technically auto log you in, we're just going to hit mark complete here and go to next. And it talks about setting up the environment. Okay. It says first we need to activate the Python environment and prepare the workspace. It says open a terminal and run the following commands. It's talking about these commands right here. Okay. Now, watch how I'm going to do this. Again, we tried to make this easy enough that you didn't have to focus so much on mastering Python syntax. I want you to do that, but I want you to do that later, right? I hope you all become Python ninjas at some point. But today, the way we made this easier is if you simply click the type button above the commands that it's having you enter, it actually enters it into the terminal for you, and all you have to do is go over and hit enter. All right. And what this will do is it'll set up the environment and launch the Jupyter Notebook for you to be able to do the exercise. Right. Now, this is part of where most cyber people that are coming into this stuff get lost, is I've watched it over and over again. Getting the notebook set up, getting the Python stuff right, getting the right libraries imported. That's always where people that are new to coding and new to machine learning coming from cyber get hung up. So in this lab, we automated that part for you so that we have a working environment that you can just use and get right to it. So in here, we do need to activate, the notebook and all that stuff. This is what we did in the command. We got it set up. So the next step is we need to open, right, the Jupyter Notebook. And to do that, you just click on it, the icon right here. Doesn't need a double click, just one left click. And that opens a notebook. And this notebook right here is where we're going to be entering all of the code. Okay. You will never have to leave out of this notebook as you're writing code, other than to maybe copy and paste code from somewhere else that I'm going to point you to. Okay. So once we're in this notebook here, we're going to start setting up our Python environment. Now, for most programming languages, you need libraries to basically think of libraries as if you need to do a bunch of different things over and over and over again, and you know you're going to need to do those things throughout your code. There's no need for you to code those things out manually every time. Okay. You can go in and write it out one time and define it as something, or there are these massive libraries out there where people have put into these libraries all the things that you will use over and over and over again for specific types of programming. Okay. In the world of machine learning and AI, there are hundreds of thousands of libraries out there that are designed to automate and ease the workflow for you to do some of the things that we'll be doing. In this case, we're going to import some of those pandas, NumPy, and some others here. Okay. Part of that is because we want to be able to do some complex math that happens behind the scenes with machine learning. And in addition to that, we're going to do a little section where we plot out on a chart what the fine tuning looked like that we just did. And then we'll tune that and go back and chart it out again, right? That's why we need all of these different, libraries. So how do we get these in? You could come over and type all this out, but remember, we automated this. So if you just hit the type command while you're in your notebook here, it puts the code in there for you. Okay. Now, again, we're not coding anything. We're not tuning anything. Right now, we're just setting up the Python environment. Once you get this in to execute it, just hit the play button here, and that runs it. Okay. Now, one of the things you want to pay attention to throughout, if you look down here at the bottom where this bottom left where it says Python 3 IPY kernel idle, whenever it's doing something, that'll say busy. So for some of these exercises, like for example, when we actually train the model, that's going to take about 5 to 7 minutes. The entire time that training is going on, that icon down there will say busy instead of idle. So that means you don't need to keep trying to go and add other code because nothing's going to happen because it's actually busy doing that training that we're going to be doing at that time. So it's important for you as you go through this to pay attention to what's happening down there so that you can know if the interpreter is doing something right then. Okay. Now it finished doing that. So that imported all the right libraries. Okay. We're going to mark complete. We want to do that at the bottom of every section. The very next step is now we have to actually prepare the data. Let me tell you the little secret. The most important thing, and some machine learning people might argue this, depends on who you talk to, but from my perspective, specifically for cyber, the most important thing when we talk about data and training models and all that is to make sure that the data set that you're using is properly prepared. Okay. If you mess that part up, everything after that is going to be garbage. You might get the exercise to work, but the outputs and the outcomes are not going to be what they need to be. Okay. Now we're going to use a raw data set here. We're using the full KDD Cup. This is in, at this time. So the reason for that is because we need to have a bigger data set of malicious events and non-malicious events and things like that to give the model more data to train on to figure out malicious versus none. Or that's a high level. So we're going to load that into the pandas frame. And how we do that again is we're just simply going to do type instead of trying to type this code out. And you can feel free to type it out if you want. Go ahead and hit play. You can see it says busy right here. And the reason is because that is a big, it's a big file, right? All right, it says idle, that means it's done. Now you can see that import happened. Here's the file. You can see how it's formatted. It shows a protocol field, a couple of protocol fields, layer 4 protocol, application layer protocol, looks TCP flags, window size, packet size. It's a bunch of fields, right? Like a whole bunch of fields. Just imagine every attribute in a packet capture. It's all laid out there, right? It's 42 columns worth of this. Okay. Now, we talked about how machine learning and AI works in the context of we need to get things as close to being represented as numbers as possible. What we're looking at here is not represented in numbers. So one of the things that we're getting ready to do at this point is we actually have to, first of all, let's get this thing into a format that we can utilize it. Okay. The first step of that is encoding categorical variables. Now, this data set includes like all of the things we just talked about: protocols, different layer protocols, segmentation size, window size, et cetera, et cetera. Machine learning models can't interpret that. They need numeric values, which is what I just said. Now, encoding helps the model see these features properly and map them to the right things. Okay. The way we're going to do that is we're going to do this particular operation right here. And again, as before, we just run type to have it print it for us. This is just to cut down on the likelihood of you doing a typo, right? Missing a colon, missing a comma or something like that. We really, in the time that we have together today, we don't have time to be troubleshooting. Did you miss a comma, or did you miss this, or did you miss that? Right? Once we get it in there, as we did before, we play that. We see that it does it. It gives us the output and shows us how it's doing the representation there. All right. So now we're going to actually do the encoding. And this is just the encoder step right here. We're telling it which encoder to use, bringing that in, and then we're using it to do the encoding. So again, just type, hit the play button and run. And again, I want to keep this as simple as possible. All right. You can see it's idle, so it finished, because importing, unless it's something really, really large, just takes like less than a second usually, especially if it's a regular size library. All right. So now we want to view an example of the data as it's represented in its encoded form, or view a sample of the data. So we do that by typing this. We hit play and we can see how it's represented now. All right. Then we want to view the transform data. And remember, if you mess up or something happens, you can always just hit type again in the next line, and it'll just repeat the command. Basically what just happened to me right there. Right? Look at how it didn't actually recognize it. So I'm just going to repeat it. All right. So let's pause for a second. So now we see what the data looks like in its transformed state. But I want to show you something about just a little tricky thing about the platform here. So notice how before when I did type, I did the exact same thing and it came in this way. It didn't recognize it as code. So it didn't actually do anything when I hit play. That is some anomaly in the translation of the automatic type thing that we put together to make it so you don't have to type this out. But if that ever happens, don't worry about it. Just hit enter. When you hit your play, go down to the next line and just hit type again. Like just type that command again and run it, and it should be fine. And I wanted that to happen. Like, I'm glad that happened, because I wanted you to see it happen and let you see me get around it, so that if you run into that later when you're doing this on your own, you kind of know how to move on past it. Because I would hate for that to be something that hangs you up for hours at a time. All right. So now that we've viewed the transformed data, like we see the format, we're going to mark that complete. Move on to the next step. And this is now where we have to normalize the numerical data. Anomaly detection models can be sensitive to ranges in numerical data. So normalization is necessary to, I don't want to say 100% avoid biases, but drastically decrease the chances of any type of bias. Okay. Now, part of that is, first we need to separate the features and target variable. Okay. How do we do that? This is right here. Notice we're not importing anything. Why? Because these are functions that are already in the libraries that we've imported already. So we don't need to import anything else to do this part. And we play that. Now we need to normalize. So we're going to now import the standard scaler to do that. And then have it do it. Notice it says busy. And now it's idle. All right. So now we want to inspect the normalized data. And you should be seeing a pattern here. Anytime you do one of these operations, you need to make sure you inspect it to make sure that the output looks like what it's supposed to look like. Right. And again, if you wouldn't know, like, because your first time through this, you would know that. This is why we're giving you this webinar so that you can see this is what the output should look like. If you get it and it shows like HTTP or TCP, that means your conversion didn't happen properly. So you got to go all the way back to like step 4. Right. So we're going to move on to the next step. Now that we've got the data in the right form, we've checked it, we've verified it, we need to save the pre-processed data. So we're going to now, we've taken some data that was in a format, we brought it in, converted it, put it into the right format. Now we need to take it back out into a common format that different tools can import. We're going to make it into a CSV file because every SIM tool in the market, every endpoint security tool in the market, every firewall tool in the market understands and can import CSV files. So we're going to use CSV as our format. Now, this is going to take a minute because this is it's going to be like right around the 3.8, 4 gig file. Okay. So it's important to that busy idle piece that I keep telling you about to pay attention to that so you're not trying to have it do something while it's already doing something. Okay. So we're going to save that pre-processed data. That's what's happening here. Going to type that. And then play it. Let's do it again. All right. So it's going to say busy for a few minutes here, right? Because like I said, that file is going to end up being like 4 gig, about 3.8. And you can watch over in your control panel over here in your notebook. You can see that it's creating that KDD Cup.csv that we specified in this Python instruction over here. Right here's where we specified that file name, and you can see that it's building that up over here. It's created it, and now it's building it. Okay. Now it's going to be busy. Our notebook's going to be busy doing this until it finishes. So while that's happening, I just want to talk about what we're going to do next, which is we're going to load the data set into a new pandas frame, explore it, look at it, check for missing values, handle missing values. There's always an issue with null values and things like that. So we're going to look at like how we get rid of those, because this whole operation, the whole thing of training a model and fine-tuning a model, it's really about preparing the data and then getting the data in a format that there's no issues with how whatever machine learning engine you're going to pump it into is how it's going to interpret it and use it. Okay. So that's what we'll do after this is finished. You can see mine is at like 1.3 gig now. Okay. Eventually it'll get to like 3.8 and it'll be done. So while this is happening, I want to remind you all of something. Okay. Again, I know for most of you, this is brand new, right? Think about when you started in cyber, the first time you had a Kali Linux command line. Remember that pain of learning the commands. And I remember some of you telling me in classes, like, you're going through those things so fast. Like, how did you memorize all those commands that quickly? Repetition is the key. There's still value in that, right? With these things, getting these steps down is the most important part. And once you have the steps down, the individual pieces that's happening at each step is where you start to fill in, that knowledge base. And then you get to where you can go out and find pretty much any model that you want, open source or otherwise, and then use any data set that you want to train that model, right? It's just like the way you want to think about it. And I know this is kind of a corny example, but work with me here. One of my favorite movies, maybe my favorite movie of all time, it's in my top 3, is a movie called The Matrix with Keanu Reeves. In that movie, one of the trademark things for that movie is whenever they wanted to learn how to do something, they would sit in this chair, this prong would like go into the back of their brain, and it would inject years of knowledge, hundreds of years of knowledge into that person's brain instantaneously, right? We're doing the equivalent of that with these models. You have to understand that language models or any type of foundation model, whether it be language model or not, any type of foundation model is just a model. For it to be effective for most tasks, you have to fine tune and train them. Okay. When you think about models, like all of you've probably used OpenAI before, you probably used one of the Claude models before and things like that. Those are general purpose models that are trained to do general purpose things. Now, we like to use them for everything. I mean, I'm guilty of that. But when it comes to something like looking for anomalies in traffic and stuff like that, you're much better off taking a smaller non-general model, okay, and then training and fine-tuning that smaller model for that specific task. If you talk to any of the SIM operators, you talk to any of the endpoint security operators, they do a lot of work with smaller models. They don't just use the big ones that we all use for everyday things. Okay. Why? There's value. For one, this training that we're doing here, it didn't take that long, right? Like it's finished with exporting that out. So it doesn't take days, weeks, months, or years like training some of the bigger models did. And it doesn't also cost us millions and millions and millions and billions of dollars. Okay. Now that we've done the export, we've got the file exported. We're going to load that data set by doing type here. Now notice how it showed up kind of weird. I'm going to hit play. Nothing happened. Like, watch this. I'm going to do it again. Right? And it came out right. So again, just a little idiosyncrasy in the type and paste function. If you see it, just hit it again and it'll fix it. Right? So it's loading that into the pandas data frames. That's taking a bit of time as well. And after that, we're going to explore the data set. Okay. Now, where might you use this? And we'll talk about this a lot more at the end when we get to that point of finishing. But like the models that you're training here, these can be plugged into nearly any, I would say, any blue team security tool. Now, could you possibly use it to train an automated pen test tool? Probably. Because if you think about it, the training data that we're using, it's again coming from real attacks. So some of the stuff that's in there could absolutely probably be used to train an offensive type capability. I mean, I wouldn't use it for that. Like I would literally go out and record myself and Jamie and a bunch of other people doing a bunch of attacks and then use that as my training data. But, there are attacks in here. You're just looking at it. You're not seeing the whole picture of the attack, right? So the value of that training data for that might not be as good as what we're discovering using it for here. All right, so let's explore the data set. We're going to do type for that operation, and we'll run that. And we can see that it's in the you know, format that we need. It shows the dimensions on the feature sets of the data, like what's there, how it's formatted and that type thing. Now, this is an important part here. We're going to look for null values or missing values. Those of you that have taken any exploit writing from me know that that's null values is also a bad thing in that world as well. So you're never going to get away from that. So we're going to look for those. And again, type play. Like at this point, I shouldn't have to say type play. You should know that's the process. Like you hit type to get it in, you hit play to run it. And you can see there are some. So we need to handle those or get rid of them or manage them. So I'll do type for that. Right, that's done. Now we want to encode the variables without the null values. And then we want to split it back into features and a target, right? So we know what we're looking at as far as what's a target and what's a feature. So we type for that. All right, and we're done with that. So now we move on to the next part. Okay, so now, before we get any deeper, we need to talk about the difference between traditional training and agent-driven model training. Okay. With traditional model training, it's a very manual process. Each step, data splitting, model instantiation, training, and evaluation is manually coded. So we need several data science and machine learning developers to help us with that part. Okay. Sequential workflow. The process is linear and the adjustments require manual code changes. So you need those same people in line to make changes when it's necessary as you're adjusting. Very time consuming, very expensive. And then there's limited automation. While scripts can automate tasks, they lack the adaptability and intelligence that an agent could have to make those decisions and make those adjustments on the fly. With agent-driven frameworks, the agents automate tasks, reducing the need for manual intervention. They can adapt to new data, retrain models, and adjust parameters autonomously based on what you've had it to do in the past. Okay. Scalability, easily scale operationally, deploying multiple agents or integrating with other systems. And there's now starting to surface in the world kind of like an agent accepted framework. So we're trying to build in the world where if we build custom agents, we're building them in a way that they are interactive with and capable of talking to other agents for certain things, almost like an open agent framework to allow agents to coexist and communicate across different places. Okay. Now, real world cybersecurity applications, they need to do continuous monitoring, and there's agents that do that better. Again, I don't want to get in trouble for like naming names, call it saying one vendor without saying the others, but like if you think about endpoint, you think about incident response, you think about SIM solutions, they're all doing variations of this in the product. Okay. Now, with automated responses upon detecting it, the threats, the agents can initiate predefined protocols, even up to sending instructions to modify routers and switches and firewalls and things like that. Okay. Now, think about that. That's a little scary, but not really, because I know of several vendors who've had intrusion prevention systems for at least 15 years. that if it detects an intrusion, it can actually go. Let's just say you've got, one vendor's firewall, you've got that same vendor's routers and switches, and you got the same vendor's IPS. So all of your security stack is from the same vendor. Well, those things can actually configure each other based on attacks being detected, right? So this is not that far-fetched from what we've already been doing. It's just that now we have an agent doing it versus a piece of equipment doing it. Okay? So don't get too freaked out by that. All right. So that's the explanation for that. Let's go to the next step. So now we're going to install OpenAI Gym. Actually, we don't need to do that. I did that for you in preparation for this webinar because it takes a while. Okay. Now we can train the agent. That's going to take like 10 minutes. So we'll have some time to talk and communicate with each other when we're doing that. So we don't have to install Gym because it's already there. We've got the OpenAI Gym, but we're going to set up the custom agent for anomaly detection. Okay. This is where we move into Agentic. Okay. Now in the notebook, we're going to double click the snippet.txt, which is right here. That'll open it in your notebook. Now notice the previous notebook is still here right beside it. It's to the left. You just open a new one. It's like opening a new tab in your browser. Okay, and we can go back and forth. So what we're going to do is we're going to do Control A to copy all of the stuff that's here. All right. Then we're going to go back to our first notebook. And in our next line, we're going to Control V to paste all of that in there. Now, if that didn't work for you, just go back. After you do Control A, just do Control C, just in case it didn't pick it up. And then go back and do Control V to paste it all in there. Somebody forgot to put Control C to copy after they did Control A for select all. I'm going to beat up whoever the editor is that put that in the instructions and left that part out. But either way, once you copy and paste it into your notebook, guess what we're going to do? We're going to run it. Now, we could use type to get that over there, but again, that little idiosyncrasy to where sometimes it adds a space or something like that, I didn't want to risk that with a large piece of code like this. This is why we're just copying and pasting it from the text file versus using the type command over here. So we've got it pasted in, and we're just going to simply run it. All right. So we got that done. And again, that was simply, bringing it in so that we could then do something with it, right? Now, the next thing is we need to initialize the agent, okay? Pretty simple process. We're just going to type that. So I'm just going to do type. To initialize it. And now we have access to the agent to start doing stuff with it. Now, this part is going to take the most amount of time, okay? We're going to train the model using the agent, but we have to get it set up for that. So let's go ahead and type this using the type command here. Now, that busy signal from that, it's going to stay busy for probably like the next 8 minutes. Okay. So while that's happening, let's think about and review, and you can write notes of what we've done. So first off, we set up our Python and Jupyter Notebook environment to where we could write our code, bring our code in, import any libraries that we need when we need them without having to worry about being in like a live Python environment to where we're on a terminal or something like that. Okay. So we did that. We set that up. Then we imported all the things that we needed. Okay. We bought in the KDD Cup public data. Like this is data you can go get off the internet of like hundreds of thousands of different types of malicious packets and things like that. Okay. We bought that data set in because again, with any type, you can't just say, I want to train a model without having data to train that model on. Right? Doesn't that just naturally make sense? Like when we say we want to train a model, we need something to train it on. Okay. So the KDD Cup data is public facing attack data, response data, security engineering data that we can get in the form of packet captures, right? To use for, we can use it to just, we can even bring that in to like Wireshark and use it to just teach people like how to threat hunt, right? We can use it to train intrusion detection systems on how to look for certain things. We can even build rules from it. We're using that data set for something completely different. We're using it to train a machine learning model on how to look for anomalies in traffic. Right? So that's where we got the KDD Cup from. You can use any data set you want. If you're doing this, if this is a capability that you're taking back to your organization to eventually roll out, you can train it on your own internal attack data. But the key here is you want to make sure you keep it offline like we're doing here. In other words, you want to have a self-contained Python environment like what we have here that you're running internally only. Don't want that bad boy to have any internet access, right? Then you can bring your internal traffic into your model and train it. Don't do that with publicly accessible models. So if you're buying, leasing, or you're paying for OpenAI or Claude or anything like that, never take your traffic data and put it in any public repository to train anything. All right. That is probably the most important thing that you get out of what we're doing here. Even if you mess up syntax, the part you can't mess up, you cannot mess up as a cyber professional. If you're going to train on real data of real attacks to your organization, make sure you keep that data offline. Your Python environment, your model, and whatever SIM or IDS or IPS or endpoint security or XDR or EDR solution that you're using, make sure it's not taking that data or taking that and putting it somewhere online either. And what I would encourage you to do is when you explain to your vendors that you're doing this, I would even ask them for something in writing to say that we're going to train this open source thing with this model and then allow your tool to plug into that data from that. We need some assurances that you're not taking that and like bringing it internally to your org and using it for marketing or something like that, right? Just ask for that in writing. Simple as that. Get that in writing, get that documented, and make sure you've documented your process for what we're doing here, that you're keeping it all offline. Now, even though we're doing this in an online lab, okay, technically, like it's the same thing. You just imagine if you had this VM not in our lab platform, but you had to copy this VM down locally, you could still do all of this locally without actually connecting to the internet. Does that make sense to everyone? That's an important, this is probably the most important thing that you get out of this. And I'm only going through this because we got a little bit of time while the model is training the model, the agent here. All right, hopefully everybody gets that point. That's the most important point for the day. All right, now that, notice it doesn't say busy anymore. Okay, it's finished. The agent splits the data, initializes the model, and fits it in training data. We want to evaluate its performance because it might perform like buns right now. So we want to make sure that it performs well. with these accuracy scores, right? So let's go ahead and do type on that. We execute and it's, you see it says it's busy. Those of you that have taken ethical hacking, pen testing, incident response, cyber threat hunting, reverse engineering, advanced reverse engineering, malware reverse engineering, network forensics, cloud pen testing, CSSP. I'm just thinking of all the things I've taught over the years. Any of those things, this is your next logical evolution. You have to get to where you can do things like this and marry it to the skills that I'm sure you've already mastered on the cyber side. This is a differentiator, and it's what's going to make you, it's going to insulate you from being replaced really quickly. Okay. So the model accuracy gives us a 1, which is great. Like, that's good. You know, like anything below that, like a, let's say a 0.5 would be cause for concern, so forth and so on. But you can see it's finished. So if we, you know, let's say we like this accuracy, like we can just go with it. We may not. We may want to, and this is the step that, like, this is where it could take it for a long time, right? So we could change like the estimators in here and set it to 1. And this would make it happen like really, really fast. Now, in our list, we have it set as, let's scroll back up here. You know, we could take this and just do only 1. And I want to leave that up for a second so y'all can see it. You know, because I imagine some of y'all are going to want to demo this. Like, once you practice and master it, you're going to want to demo it to people. Right? So I want you to see that change. And all this change does is it cuts the time down from like 15 to 20 minutes to like a lot shorter. Okay. So again, I just did type and then I changed this from 1, 2, 3 to just 1. And let's just, same thing we saw earlier, right? Where when you see it just all black like that, you know it didn't interpret it right. So I just typed it again, put it back again. All right. So here's what happens there. Is that a character? All right. So here's what we're doing when we do that, right? Like, since we set it to 1, like it really didn't do a ton of difference, but it could like go and do a lot of trying to like fine tune it more. If you got time, like you may want to experiment with like putting the 2 and the 3 back in there. Just know it's going to take an additional 30 minutes. Just give yourself 30 minutes of waiting, because it will make it more fine-tuned. But for what we're going to do with it, or what we would be doing with it as far as anomaly detection, it's not necessary to go any finer than that. But if you're doing something else, like let's say you're working in a trade environment to where every millisecond of traffic time counts, You may want to fine tune it more to get it down to where you're introducing the least amount of latency with the process that you're creating here. All right. So that is basically how that works. Now, in this step right here, we could use the agent to tune the model. And this is going to not take forever because we set the estimators to 1. Again, if we didn't, if we left it 1, 2, 3, I'd have to do like a 30-minute monologue here to talk with you all for the next 30 minutes while it's finishing. But this will make it go significantly faster than that. And then after we do that, all right, we will look at the training results with MATLAB so that you can see it like on a grid kind of. Now, when we plot this on the graph, you won't see a big curve because we're only running it once. But use your imagination. Like if you ran it a bunch of times, if you did 3, if you set it to 3 and let it go, you'd have more curves, right? And it'd be a bigger, a more significant representation on the graph. I just want to show you how to get to the graph part so that you can have something to visualize what you did with the model. All right. So now we want to visualize that. In the beginning, when we set up the environment, we did bring in MATLAB to do this and some other library piece. So we're just going to run that. And what you'll see is like it gives us this graph to show you kind of like where we did. Now, if we had set the estimators to 2 and 3 and like did a lot more fine tuning, you'd see this curve up a little bit more, right? But again, for the work that we're doing, that's not necessary. And you could go back and forth with this, right? Like you could literally go back up 2 steps, change that parameter, play it again, go back and like have the training happen again. It's going to take longer, but then you'd see like some different visualizations on there. All right. Now, if you wanted to optimize, as you can see here, we could set this. Question is, why are we setting the optimal in to 200? Oh, is that a question or is that your? Oh, okay, I see. Never mind. All right, then we can retrain the model with those optional parameters. And then once it retrains, right, like we'll evaluate it again. And then if we want, we could, visualize it again, right? Like that's the process to get to the level of accuracy that's acceptable or that you want. Now, the main part is like we didn't even necessarily need to go into the fine tuning and the optimization and the hyperparameters and all that good stuff, because that is like where I need you all to get to is just that you can take data that that's got good data as far as attacks or whatever, bring that in, import that into a model, train the model based on that, fine tune it, and now you have a model that you can point any sim, any endpoint tool, or any open source intrusion detection endpoint tool that you have. You can point it at that model and now use that for it to do its inspection or whatever the case may be. And the beauty of this exercise is you have created an agent that will do training. You're doing agentic training, so it'll train on the fly for you based on things changing. And those are parameters that we can look at as well. All right. Now, once we've done that, we'll evaluate the model. But I want to share a little secret here. I did a bonus for you all. Don't, and since we're getting close to the end here, I can share this with you. So if you open a terminal, a new terminal, okay? If you have a separate terminal open, and in that separate terminal, and don't do this now while your model is retraining, you do the restore command. What we fixed that to do is restore actually takes every single step and every piece of code that goes through this whole exercise. It writes it all out into your notebook for you so that like all the code is done and you just can just go through and just hit play and like watch it do the steps of fine tuning. I didn't want to show that before because I wanted you paying attention. But if you, for example, like let's say you're working through this on your own and you get stuck or something like that, you can always go and do this and use that notebook as kind of like your truth. And you can actually create a separate notebook and go back and through and practice it while having your truth notebook, or you might call it your answer guide or your cheat sheet with the whole thing filled out over to the left. Right. That's something I created to make it to enhance the ability for you to learn while making mistakes. Okay. That is a big part of this. Now, in the next part, and let's just move forward a little bit. I'm going to let this keep running. Not going to run the evaluation yet because it's still doing the retrain. So all that's left is in the next part, you'll look at how to deploy the model. You just prepare it for deployment. All that means is you're now getting it back out to a format that you can, that it can be used. We'll do that here. Then after that, we'll talk about integrating the model into a cybersecurity tool, okay? Like a SIM or something like that. You might have to do some normalization. Like, I don't think so. Like for most tools, like I said, they understand CSVs and things like that. But you can take this now and deploy it to any security information and event management system, any SIM. Now, yes, there are plenty of paid for commercial SIMs out there that you can plug this into. But for you to practice, especially if you don't have budget, there are several open source SIMs like Alien Vault and some others that you can get to practice this with. Because part of the point of this boot camp, and we do in there, is you'll take this model, you'll plug it in the Alien Vault, and then you'll use it to like detect traffic. You'll go out, you'll do everything that we just did. You'll spend an hour and a half doing that. Then you'll take this model, you'll plug it into Alien Vault, right? And then you will now, as the hacker, go and do some attacks and make sure that Alien Vault is able to see those attacks based on the training data that you provided and the model that you gave it. Okay. Now, before that, you'll do it with just some default rules, and you'll see that it will detect some things, but not others. Once you train the model, fine tune it, and deploy this with your SIM, you'll then go back and prove that, like, okay, now it can see things that it couldn't see before, since we hyperparameter tuned it, with the data from this model. Okay. That is the whole point of it. And this is what takes you to that next level to where you can start to do things like that. Okay. Now, in this course, this is still busy, so I'm going to take an opportunity to keep talking to you here. So let me just do a different share. And I'm just going to come back when that's done. All right. So in the course, for example, um, here's some of the labs that are related. Now, the one we just did is this one right here. Now, it's generally a 2-hour lab. Why? Because you know how I like went and set that parameter to 1 and the hyperparameter checks to make it 1 instead of 1, 2, 3. Like that cut it down quite a bit. There's other things I did to speed this up to fit a webinar format. But in the actual class, like it'll take you 2 hours because you will go with the full deep hyperparameter tuning and you'll see some differences there. But like these are the labs that you'll do in just the first 3 days, right? You will do pre-processing cybersecurity data with Python because again, I cannot overstress the importance of like formatting and processing the data properly before you even touch anything machine learning or AI related with it. We'll look at how to use RAG with Alien Vault. We'll look at how to use RAG and how not to use it, like when you use it and when you shouldn't, right? You'll build a model for anomaly detection. You'll build a deep learning model for specifically for malware detection. You'll develop a predictive analysis model for threat intelligence. You explore LLM vulnerabilities. This is where because you know, even though like the purpose of the boot camp is to get you to marry AI, agentic AI, generative AI to your cyber skills, you still need to be really versed at the security risk associated with these models, right? So, how do you exploit LLMs? How do you do prompt injection against an LLM? How do you jailbreak an LLM? How do you get around safeguards, right? Like you need to know how to do all these things so that you can know how to defend against them. And just as importantly, know when those attacks are happening. So in the boot camp, we do spend some time on that. That's a hand. These are all labs, right? None of these are videos. These are all hands-on labs that you'll be doing. Okay. Building and training for anomaly detection. This will be the deeper version of the lab you just did. We'll develop chatbots for open AI models, chatbots for reporting, incident reporting. We'll build out incident reporting chatbots using Rasa. Actually, we'll use some updated tools there too. Um, transformers, contextual pattern readers in disguise. We did a word play on the original Transformers theme song. Transformers, robots in disguise. We just said contextual pattern readers in disguise, right? But this is one of my favorite labs that we wrote here to because this takes it to another level too. Especially for those of you who are new, like you get introduced to hands-on NLP, um, which is like a whole fascinating rabbit hole, that it's tempting not to go deep down into right now. But there's also customizing LLM responses for cyber apps and hosting and securing LLM deployments in cybersecurity applications. So this is just this like I'd say this is about half of the labs that you'll do in that boot camp, and it gets better. Now let us go back to our lab. We can see it finished the second bit of fine tuning there. All right. So we want to evaluate it. And you can see it's busy. So it's doing that for us. And then after the evaluation, we'll um, look at the deploying step here. So, folks, I know this is not comfortable, right? Like anytime you're getting into new stuff, it's not comfortable, but like I encourage you to go through this whole thing like 10, 15, 20 times. Just back to back. Like every time you have time, go through it. Get these steps down. Start getting familiarized with these tools and take the boot camp. Sign up for the boot camp because it'll be me or somebody else, actually probably won't be me, but it'll be one of our other fantastic instructors that are just as seasoned as me. We're everybody that we hire for instructors are people that work in the industry. Um, they don't just teach their practitioners, but you get to like ask questions and they will come up with interesting, creative ways in the classroom for you to also deploy these things. So you can see our evaluation there. There's how it came out. Now, also in the class, we'll get into like what these numbers mean, but essentially this is good. That's a good value right there. Okay. So next we want to prepare for deployment. Right. We want to verify the deployed model. And it says it's normal. So that means it's okay. There's no like all the no value stuff and all the other stuff that we fixed, it's right. Like there's nothing that we left out. And then we go into, this is where we get into integrating it, into like a real tool, right? And the purpose of this again is if you go and double click on the sim tool here, sim text file here, we wrote this code out in here again because the type command sometimes messes up when it's large blocks. So we're going to do control A again to select it all, control C, and then we're going to go back to our notebook. In the next cell here, we're just going to control V to paste that. And then we run it. And this is a simulation to simulate real data input. And this is what the code actually looks like. It lets you know it actually did process packets. It detected 13 anomalies, 2 normal packets, anomaly rate of 86.67%. There's clearly something going on bad in that traffic, right? So it shows you that it proof of concept it works. Okay. So that is how you do that, and this next part here this is really where you and the instructor will discuss like things like we'll pull up case studies, we'll show real world instances where agentic AI really did come in and make a difference in how they were detecting things, how many things were detected, and just kind of, let you know that like this is the future of it. Those of you that in a year's time, if you can execute what I just did here in a year's time, and then just go and hook it into whatever tool you want to name, you have put yourself exponentially ahead of everybody else in the industry. Right now, I want to have a little bit of time for questions. Okay. And again, I know this is new for some of you, like, but just it's time. Go ahead and dust those cobwebs off, get that thinking cap back on. It's time to truly learn something new and add on to the cyber skills that we're so good at. This will keep us valid. And it starts to open your door to where you're now becoming an AI subject matter expert as well as you start to lean into these things. Because fine tuning models and training models for a specific task is going to be a whole career field of being able to do that. Go into a organization, find the problems that need to be solved, and then train models to solve those problems. That's going to be a valuable skill set, right? And if you really want to like, you know, put some real uh, steroids around that, like being able to build agents that can train models, which is what we did at the end there. That's going to be like a superpower. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, we have a couple in the chat. Yeah, I encourage if you have any questions, we got about 10 minutes, so feel free to drop them in the chat and I will throw them to Keatron. Yeah, while we wait, I'll just grab the screen here for 1 second.
Yeah, Jeff. So what was your feelings? You're a non-cyber person. Were you able to track along pretty good and figure
Yeah,
out?
my personal question I have is very interesting. I'm curious, like, I know absolutely nothing about Python and like the scripts and stuff you're using, so it's definitely helpful that you have that, have that all like written out, which is great. But yeah, curious if you could maybe talk just for people like me who don't really know what all that gibberish means. Would you encourage like we learn that first or like learn this first and then go back and build the Python skills so we understand,
I
what
totally
exactly?
encourage you to learn this first because so here's the thing. Python is just a tool to help you do the training, right? It's because so many of the machine learning libraries and things are the people that pioneered data science and machine learning. They were using Python. So there's so many libraries available that we choose that language. But the other part of this is, you know, like, let's just put it this way. Amazon sent out an email last year to the AWS engineers saying, if your primary job is to write code, you have about 18 months to enhance that with some AI skills and being able to do AI, write AI things, because we're not going to need pure developers as much anymore. Right. So, what I'm saying to you, Jeff, is I think it's much more important to get these processes down and understand step one, bringing in the data, training the model, fine tuning it, hyperparameterizing it, conditioning the data to be used by the models properly, and eventually deploying that model to whatever cyber situation you want. That is the most important thing, because if you want to learn Python, remember in the previous webinars we did with Chat GPT and Claude, you can take every snippet of what we just did here. You can take that and put it in the Claude and say, what are we doing here exactly? Like, how is this code actually working? And it will give you a very detailed explanation. So for me, it's more important to get the steps down. And now you have tools like Claude that you can fill in the gaps pretty quickly without someone like me. A better use of my time in a webinar like this is to get you through the process and have it recorded so you go back and do it. And then a good use of your time is to make sure you can do it. But then, like in the time that you have, if you want to dig into the Python syntax and stuff, you can use Claude for that.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Because I definitely don't want to turn into a Python course or Python.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I did just want to quickly let everybody know that we do have an end of year promotion going on. So if you are interested in taking this boot camp, which the first version runs December 8th to 12th, should show it on the screen there with some additional information. There is a promo code that you can use to save $250 on this boot camp. It actually applies to any live boot camps we're doing before the end of the year. So if you're thinking about taking this boot camp or any other training, just be aware that you can save $250 if you use that code there, the EOI 2025. I guess another question that I have, I assume other people have, is this is, as you said, it's more technical than some of the other workshops we've done. Are there prerequisites or anything you'd recommend for people who want to learn more, or before enrolling in this boot camp, to make sure that they're not getting in over their head? Go ahead.
Yes, you should have taken CEH, ethical hacking, or incident response, or CASP, or CISA Plus. Like, you need to have taken at least one of our technical hands-on cybersecurity boot camps, because as we get into it, like, we're not going to reteach that stuff. If we want you to run Nmap to scan and find a vulnerability on a machine, we're just going to say do that. Like, we're not going to teach you how to use Nmap again. So we'll expect you to know how to do those basic things that we taught you in those courses. because the learning is going to be applying AI and machine learning and agentic AI to it, not so much reteaching the pen testing or reteaching the incident response. So I would say having that as a prerequisite is good. Even if you're not a master of it, you've done it before, you remember, like it won't take long to get those wheels back turning. I think you're good. Another thing that I would recommend is like some of the intro to Python stuff. I mean, it's not necessary, but it would definitely make it smoother for you if you have that already coming into it. I don't want to say it's necessary, but it definitely makes it a little bit easier. You won't have as many syntax errors because some of the things you'll do with Python in the actual boot camp, you will have to type out like a few blocks of code sometimes. So having a little bit of Python hands-on coming into it, even if it's just an hour of Python, like intro to Python, will give you a lot as far as bridging the gap.
Yeah, we did have a question a while back. Someone asked if there was like a low budget solution for this. So I don't know if you mentioned and I missed it, like the cost, obviously using Infosec skills, there's not the cost there, but if someone's, spinning this up outside in their own environment, using the cloud, like is there cost associated with this roughly that you could talk about?
Not really, because if you're using all of this could be done offline, right? Because Jamie helped to build this. Like Jamie, we did everything open source, right? Like I remember we didn't use any for pay models. If you can answer in chat, Jamie. If he is he still here?
Yeah, I think he's still here. He's probably on mute, but yeah, he can reply in chat. Yeah.
Yeah, we use all like Llama, like everything was open source. So yeah, you can do this. You can do everything that we just did here. You can build this lab for no money.
Um, Perfect. I don't really see any other questions. A lot of people commenting saying it was a great session. So I guess we could wrap up. I don't know if you have any final thoughts, words of wisdom, anything you want to say about AI, cybersecurity, anything else to leave us with?
My words of wisdom is do this exercise until you can do it in your sleep. Take the boot camp, get ready to be a leader in the world of cyber going forward, because this is where it's at. This is what's gonna take us. This is what's gonna transform cybersecurity. Uh, Once we get to the world of quantum, I'm gonna be coming back at you again, saying now you got to add this to it. But look, this is the world we live in. Like, if you want to stay in front of the curve, if you want to stay a leader, you have to actually put that time and work in. So my advice is dig into this thing, make sure you can do it in your sleep, and just be ready because we're always going to be coming back at you with more.
All right. Well, yeah, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Huge thanks to Keatron for all the stuff you walked us through. If you do have any questions about cybersecurity, AI, team training, as I mentioned, you probably know that's what we've been doing for 20 years. So feel free to reach out to myself, Keatron on LinkedIn, send an email to Infosec. We can connect you with someone to answer those questions. Hope you all enjoyed this and have a wonderful rest of your day.